The cost of my life, as decreed by my own father, was finalized at 2 sturdy horses, a wagon-load of flour, and a pouch of American silver dollars. He didn't say it to me, of course. He never spoke to me unless it was to issue a command or a curse. I heard it from behind the thin paper wall of my room, his voice a low, guttural rumble as he bartered away his only child to a freight hauler in the sun-scorched Wyoming territory, within the dusty, desperate confines of Prospect Creek. I was a living specter at 18. My face was a pale, porcelain mask in a town of weathered, sun-browned skin. My hair was not brown or blonde, but a cascade of silk black ink that seemed to drink the light, and my eyes were the dark, almond shape of my mother's, a constant, walking reminder of the world he'd left behind and now despised. I was the Chinese girl, the town's silent shadow. To my father, Chen, I was less than a shadow. I was a monument to his shame, a constant reminder of the wife he'd lost in the blood and agony of my birth, and of the heritage he desperately tried to erase. He looked at me and saw not a daughter, but a curse made flesh, an affliction. His hatred was a physical presence in our small, dark room behind the laundry, a chill that no stove could ever truly warm. There was, however, a memory I held onto, a flickering candle flame in the tempest of his cruelty. It was the faint, sweet echo of my mother's voice, humming a lullaby in a language he had forbidden. In the memory, her hand was warm on my head, her presence a balm. But I also remembered my father's shadow in the doorway, his face a thundercloud even then. His disgust was not born of my appearance alone, it was an older, deeper rot. He had come to this country for gold and opportunity, only to find hardship and prejudice. He saw my mother's face in mine and blamed her, blamed me, for his failure to become the man he thought he should be. And now, his solution was as swift as it was brutal. He would excise the blight. He would sell me. The words I'd overheard confirmed it. The merchant, a man named Gable, would be taking me west to a rancher in the high plains for a handsome price. Chen would finally be unburdened. The morning he cast me out, he looked at me one last time, his eyes holding a chilling satisfaction. A lonely rancher in the middle of nowhere is a fitting place for a creature like you, he sneered. Perhaps the wilderness will finish the job your mother started. He shoved me forward, out of the dim, steamy laundry and into the brutal, unforgiving glare of the sun, where the man who now owned me waited. The journey began in silence. Mr. Gable, the merchant, did not speak to me. He simply indicated a place for me on the wagon seat, his face as weathered and unreadable as the rocky mesas we slowly passed. The world I had known, a world of shadows and averted eyes, was replaced by the vast, punishing expanse of the Wyoming plains. The sun was a relentless hammer, and I kept my head down, a borrowed bonnet doing little to shield my face. Every creak of the wagon wheels sent a tremor of fear through me. My father's words echoed in my mind, painting a horrifying picture of the brute I was being delivered to. I was a lamb being led to a slaughter I could not comprehend, and my fear was a cold, hard stone in my belly. For 2 days, we traveled like this, a silent pair adrift in a sea of dust and shimmering heat. Mr. Gable was not unkind, but he was not kind either. He was a businessman who had concluded his transaction and was now simply delivering the goods. I was cargo. Less than human, more than livestock, but cargo all the same. I huddled into myself, trying to become as small and unnoticeable as possible. On the second night, we made camp in the shelter of a rock formation. Mr. Gable built a small fire, and for the first time, he truly looked at me. His eyes, accustomed to judging the value of things, seemed to be taking a different kind of measure. "You're bound for the Blackwood Ranch," he said, his voice raspy from the dust. I flinched, clutching the tin cup he'd given me so tightly my knuckles ached. He saw it and let out a slow sigh, poking the fire with a stick. "The man you're to marry, his name is Arthur. A good man, respected. His wife, she died giving birth 2 winters ago. The child, too. He's mourned her deeply." My mind reeled. A widower. This was a person, a man with a history, a loss. It was a detail too specific for the faceless monster of my father's tales. Mr. Gable looked away from the fire and back to me, his expression serious. "He knows what you look like, girl. The stories travel. He saw you in town once, a few months back. He sent a letter to my post, asking about the quiet Chinese girl at the laundry. I stared at him, my breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a random purchase. It was a specific request. He knows. I whispered, the words barely audible. Mr. Gable nodded. He does. And you need to understand something. Where you come from, they see a foreigner, a curiosity, a burden. He leaned forward slightly, the firelight catching the sharp planes of his face. Arthur, he doesn't see that. He saw you that day, standing in the shadows, and he said it was like seeing a porcelain doll, something precious and unbroken in a world of dirt and noise. He doesn't believe he bought a servant, He believes he's being sent an angel. The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. An angel. The concept was so alien, so utterly contrary to the 18 years of my existence, that I couldn't process it. All my life, I had been a blemish, a stain, a thing of shame to be hidden away. To think that the very features that marked me as an outcast could be seen as a sign of grace was like being told the sun rose in the west. It shattered the cold certainty of my own worthlessness. I didn't sleep that night. I sat wrapped in my blanket, watching the embers of the fire die, and for the first time, the stone of fear in my belly began to dissolve, replaced by something far more terrifying and fragile, a flicker of hope. The final day of our journey, we climbed into rolling foothills. The air grew cooler, cleaner, and the world came alive with hardy pines and green meadows. As we rounded a final sharp bend, a valley opened up below us, so lush and green it seemed impossible, a secret world cradled by the harsh, stony arms of the mountains. A clear river snaked through its center, and in the heart of that impossible green, I saw the buildings of a sprawling ranch and the thin, gentle plumes of smoke rising from its chimneys. As the wagon rolled into the valley, the world transformed. This was no grim, fearsome outpost. It was a place of order and life. The air smelled of wood smoke, horses, and the sweet scent of hay. Ranch hands paused their work to stare at our approach, their curiosity open and unashamed. It was a community, interconnected and pulsing with a serene energy that stood in stark contrast to the brittle, angry silence of my father's house. I felt impossibly foreign, impossibly fragile, a single dark orchid in a field of sunflowers. Every eye was on me, and I braced myself for the familiar sting of revulsion, but it never came. Mr. Gable brought the wagon to a halt before the main house, a sturdy log structure with a wide, welcoming porch. A man came out of the house and walked toward us. He was tall, with a lean, powerful build that spoke of a life of hard work. He wore simple denim trousers and a homespun shirt, his skin tanned by the sun. His dark hair was peppered with grey at the temples, and his face was handsome, carved with lines of both strength and a quiet, settled sorrow. But it was his eyes that held me captive. They were a clear, startling blue, and they held an intelligence that was as sharp as it was ancient. Mr. Gable dismounted, speaking to him in a low voice. The tall man listened patiently, his gaze never leaving me. This was Arthur. He had to be. When the merchant finished, Arthur took a slow step forward. I flinched, my body instinctively coiling, preparing for a harsh word or a rough hand. But he stopped a respectful distance away. He looked at me, truly looked, as if he were seeing a sunrise for the first time. And in the depths of his eyes, I saw not disgust, not anger, not even pity. I saw wonder. Then he spoke, his voice a low baritone, not directed at Mr. Gable, but straight to my soul. "Welcome home," he said. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight of acceptance that buckled my knees. He saw the terror in my stillness, the way I held myself braced for an impact that wasn't coming. A flicker of understanding crossed his face. He turned and gestured for me to follow, leading me into the house. It was clean and cool inside, smelling of beeswax and wood smoke. He led me to a small, private room with a simple bed, a clean wash basin, and a window that looked out onto a garden of wildflowers. "This will be your room," he said, his English slow and careful. "You may rest. No one will trouble you." He looked at me, his gaze steady, then simply nodded once, turned, and left me standing in the doorway of what he had just declared my own. For 3 days, my world was that room. A woman, not much older than I, with a kind, open face and warm brown eyes, brought me my meals. She introduced herself as Martha, Arthur's sister-in-law, who kept house for him. She had a young son, a boy of about 5, who had been plagued by a deep, chesty cough that rattled his small frame. One afternoon, as the boy fell into another coughing fit, a memory surfaced, sharp and clear: my mother, crushing dried loquat leaves and mixing them with honey to make a soothing syrup for my own childhood coughs. The knowledge was there, a dormant seed planted long ago. To act on it felt like a terrifying risk. In Prospect Creek, such knowledge would have been called witchcraft. But then I looked at Martha's worried face, and a new feeling warred with the old fear, the desire to help, to give something back for the kindness I had been shown. That evening, using herbs from the garden and a bit of honey from the kitchen, I prepared the syrup. My heart pounding, I approached Martha and held out the small cup. I pointed to her son, then to my own chest, and made the motion of a deep, clear breath. Martha looked from the strange, dark concoction to my face. She saw the fear in my eyes, but she must have seen the earnestness, too. She took a leap of faith. She took the syrup and gave a spoonful to her son. The next morning, Martha came to my door. Her son was with her, breathing easily, the racking cough nearly silenced. He looked up at me and gave me a shy, gap-toothed smile. Martha's eyes shone with a gratitude so profound it left me speechless. She took my hands in hers and squeezed them, speaking soft words that I did not need to understand to feel their meaning. The news spread. The ranch hands began to see me differently. I was not just the strange Chinese girl Arthur had bought, I was the woman whose hands knew the secrets of the plants. I was the healer. Several weeks passed. My quiet life settled into a gentle rhythm. Arthur began to teach me more English, and I, in turn, taught him the names of the herbs in my mother's tongue. Our lessons were threads of connection, weaving our two worlds together. One evening, as twilight bled purple and orange across the sky, he asked me to walk with him. He led me to a small, hidden cove where a creek pooled deep and still, reflecting the stardusted sky. My wife, Sarah, he began, the name spoken with a soft reverence. She loved this place. She had a gift for making things grow. When she left, it was as if the color faded from the valley. For 2 years, my heart has been a barren field. He paused, his honesty a raw, vulnerable thing. He took a breath and looked directly at me, his gaze so intense it felt as if he were seeing into my very soul. Then I saw you. They spoke of you in town like you were a stray, something to be pitied or scorned. But I didn't see a stray, I saw a flower growing in the cracks of a stone. I saw a spirit that endured the harshest sun and refused to wither. I knew then that a spirit like that would understand how to bring life back to a barren field. His words undid me. All my life, my story had been one of shame. He had taken that same story, that same pain, and reframed it as a testament to my strength. 'Tis I hadn't even known were there pricked my eyes. No one has ever seen strength in me, I whispered, my voice trembling. My father, he told me my existence was a curse. Arthur reached out and gently, tentatively, laid his hand over mine. It was the first time he had touched me. The contact was not one of ownership, but of pure, grounding connection. A man who looks at a rose and complains about its thorns, he said, his voice thick with emotion, is not seeing the flower. He is seeing the blindness in his own soul. Your father was blind with those words. He did not just comfort me, he freed me. He took the burden of my father's shame and exposed it for what it was, a failing not in me, but in him. The weeks that followed were like a slow, beautiful sunrise. The space between Arthur and me closed, filled with shared moments. One evening, he led me once again to our quiet cove. From a pocket, he took a small, carved wooden box. Inside, on a bed of velvet, lay a simple silver locket. He said, his voice low and steady. When you came to this valley, you were a seed planted in hope. I have watched you grow, sinking your roots into our earth. You have healed the broken ground of my own heart. I no longer wish to watch you from across the hall. I wish to share my home with you. Be my wife, be the heart that beats beside mine. Tears streamed freely down my face, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were a cleansing rain. I was sold into this life, Arthur, I said, my voice thick but strong. I was sent here as a piece of property. But now, I reached out and gently touched his face. I choose it. Freely, and with all of my heart. I choose you. Our wedding was a simple affair at the courthouse in the next town, with Martha and an old ranch hand as our witnesses. But it was more sacred than any grand ceremony. As we stood before the justice, I looked at the kind, earnest man beside me, the man who had seen a flower where everyone else had seen a weed. The lonely girl from Prospect Creek was gone. I was my Blackwood. I was home. Our peace was shattered on a bright afternoon in late autumn. A rider galloped into the ranch yard, his horse lathered in sweat. He ran straight for Arthur, speaking in urgent, low tones. I watched from the porch, a cold knot of dread tightening in my stomach. Arthur's face hardened, his posture shifting from peaceful husband to resolute landowner. He strode toward me, his expression grim. The sheriff is on his way up from town, he said. He's not alone. He has a guide, a Chinese man who says his daughter was kidnapped. The world went cold. Chen. My father. He had come. The old terror surged through me, the instinct to run, to hide. But then I felt Arthur's hand on my shoulder, firm and grounding. I looked up into his face and saw no fear, only a calm, unshakable resolve. I looked past him and saw Martha in the doorway, her expression one of fierce, protective anger. The ranch hands were gathering, their loyalty written on their faces. They were my family. The strength they gave me rose up to meet the terror and beat it back. I will not hide from him, Arthur, I said, my voice clear and steady. I am not that frightened girl anymore. I am your wife. We stood on the porch and waited. Soon, 2 riders emerged from the tree line, the town sheriff and, beside him, my father. His face was a mask of cruel arrogance, which shifted to a sneer of triumph when his eyes found me. You see, Sheriff, he boomed, pointing a thick finger. There she is. My daughter, held captive by this man. I demand you retrieve my property. The word property hung in the air. Arthur tensed, but I stepped forward, my voice ringing with a clarity that surprised even myself. I am not your property. You speak of captivity, but the only cage I have ever known was the one you kept me in for 18 years. You speak of kidnapping, but I remember a transaction. I remember the price Mr. Gable paid you. You didn't lose a daughter that day, Chen. You sold 1 inch. The truth stunned him into silence. Before he could retort, Martha stepped forward beside me. She is no captive, Sheriff, she said. She is family. When my son was sick unto death, it was her hands that healed him. An old ranch hand stepped up on my other side. This woman is the heart of this ranch now. She's brought life back to this place, and to its master. She belongs here. The sheriff had seen enough. He looked from my father's hateful, contorted face to me, standing calm and protected. He saw the truth. He turned to my father, his tone one of cool finality. Sir, it is clear to me that this woman is in no distress. She is here of her own free will. This is a family dispute, not a legal one. We are leaving. The word struck my father like a physical blow. Defeat washed over his face, leaving it slack and pale. He looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with a venomous, impotent hatred. But it couldn't touch me anymore. The power he once held over me was broken. As they disappeared into the trees, Arthur wrapped his arms around me. I leaned my head against his chest and took the first truly free breath of my entire life. The last ghost of my past was finally laid to rest. The seasons turned, and as spring arrived with a triumphant burst of life, I knew another life was stirring within me. I led Arthur to the garden and placed his large, warm hand over my belly. A slow smile of pure, unadulterated joy spread across his face, a smile that seemed to outshine the sun. He knelt before me, his touch filled with a reverence that humbled me. Our child, a living symbol of hope, a bridge between two worlds. Standing there with my husband, my hands resting on the gentle swell of new life, I finally understood. True beauty was never about the color of one's skin or the shape of one's eyes. It was a light within the soul, a resilience that could make flowers grow in the desert. It was a love that had blossomed in the most unexpected of places, a sacred fire that could never be extinguished.